Well, hello everybody. John Porterfield here, JP, here live at NAB. Want to thank Epifan for sponsoring this opportunity to stream live from the NAB show floor. I'm coming live with a special little conversation here with Brian Blackmore from Church Production Magazine. Brian, welcome.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. Good
You're
to be
welcome.
here.
Absolutely. So we're all here at this event this week. Obviously, NAB's happening. A lot of announcements, a lot of things that are occurring throughout the week. A lot of different types of technology. Epifans obviously make some announcements, and if you don't know, haven't heard, go to the Epifan website. Make sure you check out. They had a great announcement this morning, and they're talking about some great new solutions when we talk about technologies in terms of streaming, cloud, and other types of streaming production environments. In fact, that's kind of my role with Social 180 Group, along with what I do in streaming evangelism for streaming media, is talking about how we advocate and how we utilize these technologies in real production. And that kind of, Brian, you've been here for several days like I have. So far, maybe I'll have you introduce yourself first to the audience. Let's do that first.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Brian Blackmore. I'm the editor and publisher and one of the partners in Church Production Magazine. This will be 25 years of publishing church production, which is hard to believe I'm actually saying that. This is actually, I believe, my 25th NAB as well. I was actually coming to NAB prior to starting church production in a different role. But yeah, so it's good to be here. The show is coming back from it's not quite what it was pre-COVID, but it's moving in that direction. So much is different, so much has changed at NAB and in the church market. So I'm excited to be here and be able to talk about it and share it with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think it's a great opportunity now to kind of talk about, you've been here for several days. There's been a slew of announcements from a lot of variety of different folks here. From your perspective, you've been here, as you've mentioned, several times over the years. What are you seeing right now currently the past couple of days?
Oh, it's really interesting. Even what we meant when we named the publication Church Production 25 years ago, we were primarily talking about live production. Most of that was audio, and some churches were doing video and lighting. And now Church Production, the content that we're publishing is, well, more than half of it is about content creation and filmmaking and streaming and video production. So, less than half of it is about the live events. So, and NAB has changed over the 25 years too, where it was primarily talking to, television stations and production companies and things like that. And now it's content creation central. There's so much here. It's such a big show, and so many of the companies recognize that there's opportunity down market from television stations and Hollywood level productions and things like that. And that, of course, a large swath of that somewhat down market bit of production is in the church market. So yeah, I don't know, there's so much happened as a result of COVID. The research that we've seen is approximately 30% of churches were streaming before COVID, and over 80% of churches are now streaming post-COVID.
Right.
Well, with that becomes a whole new set of technology pain points, if you will, and a lot of them having to do with asset management and storage. And while that technology has been around for decades, people have been doing it at the very high end for decades, the down market, affordable, easy to use options were either hard to find or didn't work very well. And there's an awful lot of discussion about asset management and storage here at the show, a very competitive environment, and that's benefiting our readers and in the church market in general. Because when you're working off tithes and offerings, of course, you want the most efficient, but also the most affordable solution. So,
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and kind of segueing on that, you kind of brought up, which is true in terms of the storage and the digital assets and how you manage from a content management system. I think you bring up a good point. Obviously with COVID, and it really kind of accelerated, not that the technologies probably weren't there already, but it really accelerated the adoption. Many of these small and large church organizations were then implementing some kind of a live streaming, video on demand type solution. And from your perspective, I mean, there's been a lot of changes over the past couple of years, obviously. That's something you guys are probably seeing from the readers and people that are communicating with you on what they need.
It's extremely exciting, and it's a lot of fun to be part of, being a conduit, an information conduit about what's going on in the marketplace, and be able to tell, tens of thousands of other churches what's going on. The whole concept of simulated live or pseudo live. So my church falls into that category where it looks like a live stream, but it's actually pre-produced.
Right.
And I would think prior to COVID, that model would have been very much an outlier, more like a television program. Or most churches that were streaming or actually live streaming. Well, the idea of doing pseudo live or simulated live in order to be able to put out a reliably higher quality product, because you can do post work and mix your audio better and things like that, is this entirely concept. It's a very realistic concept nowadays, where prior to COVID it would have been very much an outlier. Another thing that we're seeing that I think is very interesting is the result of COVID and the priority that technology and video production in particular has in a church's ministry, is it's actually there's changes coming to church architecture. Churches are physically being designed with studios and podcasting studios and video production spaces and places for VR. That just they never would have thought of that 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's actually being designed into the physical structure. I think it just really speaks to the acceptance of technology by senior leaders, some of whom would have been resistant to technology 3, 4, 5 years ago, or at least it would have been considered a necessary evil, if you will. That's probably not the best term to use in a house of worship environment, but yeah, something that was necessary but not exactly a priority.
Right.
And now senior leaders have seen the value of high quality video production and its role in their social media and their digital presence, and how that's really a vital element to doing ministry today.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good point. Like we have a good friend, Jeff Reed, with the Digital Church podcast, and Jeff started this some years ago, and this was kind of the discussion about where as technology kind of comes in terms of media. We're seeing the transition of the digital church, and as you're talking about, this is something that you kind of want to also bring up, I think, in an upcoming conference, and kind of you have an event coming up in August that you are going to be hosting along with others, talking about just that, maybe having some talking points around, kind of where is it going, right? Yeah. What does it look like?
Well, thank you for giving us opportunity to talk about that. So, yeah, in addition to churchproduction.com, the publishing side of our organization, is we have an event called the Capture Summit, capturesummit.com. This will be our 7th year of hosting this event. It's primarily about video production, but again, some of the changes I mentioned as a result of COVID have resulted in changes at the event as well. So all things video production and live streaming, IMAG, filmmaking, content creation, podcasting, and all of those elements and how they tie together on a church's digital presence, their digital strategy, their social media approach. It all works in an ideal world, lock in key, hand in hand. But again, it's something virtually every church I talk to is still trying to figure out, and yet they see that this is absolutely positively the direction that where ministries are and where they will be, where they will continue to go in the future.
Absolutely. And so for people to get to, they may not be familiar with what you're doing from a church production magazine, how can we connect them, maybe these people are unfamiliar, get them kind of integrate, get them aware of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, churchproduction.com, it's a free online publication for focused on all the church technology and creative roles. So everything from a sound engineer to a creative pastor, and everything in between. Filmmakers, videographers, lighting designers, production managers, technical directors, everything in between. communications directors and things like that. It's a free publication. It's all digital, churchproduction.com. We do ask you to subscribe, but again, it is free. It's free to get started. And once you subscribe, then you'll be getting, we actually send out content, helpful content 6 days a week, and you'll also get information about our Capture Summit. There's links to Capture Summit from churchproduction.com, or if you'd like to, just go to capturesummit.com to find out more strictly about the event. So.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's going to be one super useful for people to plan for coming out, especially out of this event where you kind of get overwhelmed a little bit with so many of the different elements that we've talked about. And obviously, are there any key takeaways as we kind of wrap up? Is there any key takeaways from your perspective, right, that you would like to learn more about from this event?
One thing that I would add about the Capture Summit, you mentioned it's easy to get overwhelmed at NAB.
Yeah.
It really is. Unless you've been to an NAB, it's hard to describe how big it is, even though it's not quite as big as it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it will come back. It is easy to get overwhelmed by all the technology, and it's just like drinking from a fire hose. What we find at Capture, being a smaller event, again, maybe 500 to 700 churches, is the churches learning from each other. The conversations that you have in the hallways and the question and answer opportunities that you have in these conference sessions at Capture, learning the different contexts in which these technologies apply and how churches are using particular solutions maybe in unconventional, outside the box ways. It's very, very exciting and very, very rewarding. So you'll learn about the technologies, but you'll also at the Capture Summit learn. You'll meet contacts that you will want to stay in touch with, and there'll be relationships and community opportunities and networking. It's just another value to being part of the Capture Summit. So.
I'm excited that you have that coming up, because I think I agree with you, and I think that's kind of the thing that my takeaway note from this past couple of days has been that there's a lot of information to consume. Kind of, I use the word digest. That's just me, but try to differentiate where the value add in some of these solutions, especially for in the houses of worship and for churches and to where you're right. So, Brian, thank you. I wish you a great rest of the show. Thank you for taking the time to talk with everybody. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free on my channel or through Epiphan. Let us know. Ask a question. If you have a comment, want to follow up, want to get more information, connect with Brian and his organization, please do. Again, I want to thank Epiphan for their sponsorship at this time and putting this together. If you're at NAB by chance and you happen to be watching this, stop by the Epiphan booth. They've got some great information, and say hi. Thank you.